And there will be more participants join also, maybe, yeah, consistently throughout the session. Hi, Francesca. I will continue to need more participants to join. In the meantime, feel free to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annie, and welcome to the third and final session of the Global Diaspora Virtual Exchange this year. I hope that my audio is clear. Under the theme, Concrete Solutions on the Ground, we have organized 2 sessions on health and well-being in February and on climate action in March. Today is the final session of this year's series on gender and youth empowerment. We would like to welcome everybody here today. Thank you for joining us, and please do introduce yourself in the chat box, where we will also be posting relevant resources. This year's Global Diaspora Virtual Exchange is organized under the framework of the Global Diaspora Policy Alliance, or GDPA, launched in September last year jointly with the governments and diasporas, and in long-term partnerships with the Global Diaspora Confederation, the Migration Youth and Children Platform, and the Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism. Given the relevance of the session topic with the GDPA Technical Working Group on Gender and Youth, I would like to first invite the co-chair of the TWG representative from the government of Georgia and the government of Sierra Leone to share some short remarks. Ms. Aliona Tuwa, head of the Division for Relations with Compatriots and Diaspora Organizations, the Department for Relations with Diaspora and Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Georgia, has a dedicated 30 years of public service, including 17 years of extensive experience in diaspora-related matters. She leads a division responsible for fostering relations with the Georgian diaspora organizations overseas. And meanwhile, Mr. Robert Koroma, first counselor of
Sorry, Francesca, I unmuted you also.
No worries. Thank you so much, Annie. And please do remember to mute yourselves, and please let us know if you need assistance in the chat within the session if it's hard, and the host can definitely help muting for you. Again, Mr. Robert Koroma, first counselor, Sierra Leone Embassy and Permanent Mission in Geneva. He has 15 years of experience working with the Sierra Leone Foreign Ministry. Mr. Koroma also covers human rights and humanitarian affairs, among other organizations in Geneva. So passing the floor over to Ms. Aliona and then Mr. Robert, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Francesca. Thank you for the introduction. Dear colleagues and distinguished participants, it's my honor and privilege to participate in the third and the final session of the 2025 Global Diaspora Virtual Exchange dedicated to the topic of gender and youth. As many of you know, the Global Diaspora Policy Alliance operates through 3 pillars, each represented by a dedicated technical working group. These pillars work in harmony to form one comprehensive agenda, driving joint efforts and common vision for diaspora. As our session today is dedicated to gender and youth, we highlight once again how important and integral it is to bring more youth and women empowerment initiatives on board. I am proud to highlight that Georgia has a rich history of empowering diaspora youth. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Georgia has developed and implemented some of the flagship initiatives targeting diaspora youth. These initiatives include roundtable discussions with young diaspora leaders, collecting their feedback and perspectives, administering a special program for high qualified youth called Become a Young Ambassador of Your Country, and organizing summer camp for diaspora youth that welcomes young members of the diaspora to Georgia to explore the country's rich history and culture. These are active and most tangible efforts that have resulted in a number of diaspora leaders motivated youth to contribute to the development of Georgia. Let me share the story of a Georgian living abroad who, through the Young Ambassadors Program, became an active advocate for cultural diplomacy and now leads a prominent youth initiative. He has inspired hundreds of people to learn more about Georgia, explore our country's potential, and deepen cooperative ties. Through public talks, cultural events, he has built meaningful bridges between communities, generating deeper awareness and respect for Georgia's cultural identity and values. Integrating youth component in a 1-hour joint action plan and common plan of action is by all means timely and essential for long-term impact and sustainability. The GDPA technical working groups have specific plans ahead. We have identified needs and way ahead together, and we hope to mobilize our efforts to achieve more engaged youth, more empowered women in diaspora. Together, we will discuss strategies to integrate the talents, skills, and aspirations of diaspora women and youth into national and international plans, ensuring that their contributions are fully recognized and supported. In closing, I want to express my sincere gratitude to each of you for being part of this important and timely dialogue. I also would like to greet Ms. Liana Nitsetskaya, the representative of Georgian diaspora from the United States of America. She leads one of the successful Georgian diaspora organizations in the USA, Georgian Heritage Foundation. And special thanks go to IOM for providing this platform of exchange. So I look forward to exciting discussion today, and I'm also eager to meeting you in other discussion sessions of GDPA. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aliona. Handing the floor over to Mr. Robert.
Thank you. I am pleased to join my sister from Georgia and to say Sierra Leone is pleased to join Georgia and the global diaspora team, especially we who are tasked with the responsibility to work on the stream on gender and youth. Today's discussion is on concrete solutions on the ground. We are pleased that we are here again, and we would have speakers from especially Sierra Leone to. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Yes, Mr. Robert, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Robert.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Interruption. But this session is being held against a background that is very, very, well, I would say, interesting, but very challenging. Because today, diaspora communities, migrant refugees, and their descendants face unique challenges related to gender and youth development, particularly in an era marked by political instability, economic crisis, climate change, cultural globalization, and these uncertainties exacerbate the existing vulnerabilities, especially for young people and women, who often navigate interesting forms of, identity crisis, discrimination, and socioeconomic pressure. In this situation, we are expecting the young people to act and to interact. In Sierra Leone, the Ministry of Youth, under the project of National Youth Commission, is working very hard to make sure that the youths are integrated. And the Gender and Equality Act in Sierra Leone is pushing for equality amongst women. With these two programs, Sierra Leone is set to allow realities on the ground to manifest themselves and bring the change that we are all looking forward to achieve. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is working with partners to make sure that the ground is level to achieve all of these realities. I am joining my colleagues in the IOM to say you are all welcome and we are all required to deliberate today and present a reality, present some situation in which we could operate and make sure that life is better for the young people and for the diaspora, with the view that they should be heard and they should be included in decision making. We want to hear what is coming and to see what the reality is. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your audience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robert. And thank you to both, again, for sharing these wonderful initiatives and powerful stories from Georgia and Sierra Leone. Your dedication to harnessing the power of the diaspora, especially championing change with youth and women, is inspiring. I personally cannot think of a more fitting speaker, more fitting set of speakers for opening today's session. My name is Francesca, and I'm one of 4 global focal points at the Migration, Youth, and Children platform, pushing to impact the highest level of migration governance. And at the cornerstone of everything we do at MyCP is gender and youth empowerment. We also think that at the heart of everything we do is intersectionality. Because we see young people not only as the bridge across generations, but also as the crucial link connecting different sectors for a whole of society approach. In this, we also recognize a gender perspective, especially in engaging with the diaspora community. Gender shapes experiences of migration, identity, and belonging, and young people, particularly with those with lived experiences, hold the power to challenge norms and co-create more inclusive narratives and policies alongside governments, which is why it is such a pleasure for me to introduce to you today, in today's session, 3 diaspora professionals in this area to further unpack these recommendations with concrete examples and solutions. Please join me to welcome Liana Nitseskaia, founder and president of the Georgian Heritage Foundation, an organization dedicated to preserving and promoting Georgian culture while strengthening diaspora connections worldwide. Liana is also a strategic leader in the architecture and design industry. Next, we have Noel T.G. Newman, founder of Under 30 CEOs Africa, a youth-led business and advisory consultancy firm. He has over 7 years of corporate and governance experience on youth development, girls empowerment, entrepreneurship, commercialization of education, and in the financial services sector. And last but not the least, we have Isha Richards, chair of the Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council, a youth-led initiative established by the Jamaican Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Asha is a dedicated advocate for human development and is among the first cohort of the International Organization for Migration Youth Changemakers. You can find the full bios of today's speaker session in the webpage on the iDiaspora platform. And if you have any questions to the panelists or reflections to the guiding questions, please post them in the chat for the open discussion. Otherwise, we will be moving into the first guiding question for today's panel discussion. So given your experiences and also the different perspectives that you are coming from, I'd like to hear from you, what strategies can governments adopt to effectively integrate the talent of diaspora women and youth into national plans for climate action, health, education, and technology? What are the potential benefits and challenges of such integration? Maybe Liana, you would like to start?
First of all, thank you so much for having me amongst you. It's an honor. Thank you, MFA of Georgia, for inviting me to be a part of this discussion. It truly is timely, and it's truly an honor to be with you. As being a female and woman in a diaspora, it truly is a critical moment. I believe the future is in diaspora. And the first step is truly recognize women and youth as active contributors of the diaspora. We are lucky that a lot of governments are starting doing that. Again, it's a human capital, right? And our lived experiences and cross-cultural knowledge and resilience are truly powerful assets in today's interconnected world, be it climate or health, education, or tech. What I believe governments can adopt, I wanted to narrow it down to three simple but essential strategies. Number one is creating intentional entry points, meaning not just advisory roles or honorary mentions, but real ongoing opportunities for the diaspora talent to co-design policies, lead projects, and inform national agendas, as well as this could be including diaspora innovation hubs, climate youth councils, or digital roundtables focused on public and health education. That is critical. Second one, building bridges. And I'm a big believer on building the bridges, especially in most turbulent time the world is in the political divide, because we feel it in the diaspora, the division amongst diaspora members and worldwide. I would say pretty much in almost every country. So for us to build the bridges and not bureaucracies, diaspora engagement is critical. It should feel accessible, non-transactional, and governments can invest in relationship building through local embassies, consulate, diaspora organizations, to identify, connect, and regularly engage diaspora women and youth who are already working in the field. And the third one is align values and not just skills. So it's not, sometimes we'll look at degrees to match the jobs, but I think it's critical to match the experience to the jobs. And it's about listening, what diaspora members truly care about. Sometimes we say that we do listen, but it's usually more often than not is not the case. And how we want to serve our country, right, and our diaspora communities as well. So I believe when purpose is honored and commitment just follows naturally. And I believe that it's not the lack of trust, but political will, and not the lack of talent that we are facing. And so, but if we lead with integrity and transparency, the results will speak for itself.
Thank you very much, Ms. Liana, for sharing this, and also for being so honest with us with regards to your positionality as a woman, as a member of the diaspora as well, and for sharing the three strategies. Very, very much resonate with the idea of not having tokenistic, but rather real opportunities. As someone who works very closely with youth, this is something that we have seen time and time again, but also sharing with us some very supposedly obvious things like having an abundance of talent and the lack of political will. And so now I think I'm gonna hand it over to Noelle. Noelle, maybe you have some thoughts on this as well, maybe on something that Liana also shared, where she talked about matching experiences to the job that aligns not just skills, but also values, because this is something that is kind of relevant to your experience in the field. But handing it over to you. Please unmute yourself.
My apologies. My apologies. Thank you so much, Francesca. Thank you to the team for organizing this great session. I think I'm passionate to talk about issues related to gender and issues related to youth. And just to pick up from where Lina stopped, I think women and youth constitute a large portion of the diaspora community, and the strategy that government can be able to adopt to effectively integrate the talents of their international plan is for them to be included in the consultative process. So one of the basic foundation of government is to be able to make rules and regulations, and during the rules and regulations, they have what is called consultations. So one of a major strategy I think government can be able to include women and youth in building a national plan that is related to climate action, related to education, related to innovation, or as the case may be, for them to be fully included in the consultative process. And thereby leveraging on those inclusivity, how we can be able to contribute back home. I think another strategy again that government can be able to adopt to effectively integrate the talent of diaspora women is to facilitate diaspora exchange programs. Diaspora exchange programs means where we can be able to share knowledge, we can be able to exchange technology, we can be able to share cultures. This is one thing that is really important, especially in the diaspora community.
Apologies, Noel, could you please, sorry to cut you off, if you could please like come forward closer to the mic so that it's clearer, but
great. So can you hear me now?
definitely perfect.
Oh, okay, amazing. So as I was saying, another strategy that government can be able to adopt is to integrate the talents of diaspora community is to leverage on exchange programs where diasporas can be able to contribute back home, and as well those back home can be able to contribute back to the diaspora society, because women and youth constitutes a large portion of the diaspora community, and if they're included in the process, in the consultation process, in building national plans, we believe that these plans will last for a long time, and if the knowledge of being able to tap into that and the contributions back home are going to be successful. I think the benefits it will give to the national plan in developing climate or in developing innovation or in developing education is that governments and the diaspora community can be able to work with the pool of expertise in building the national plans. Because we have diasporas who are willing to contribute back home, but they don't have the necessary connections, they don't have the necessary platforms to be able to connect back home. So I think one of the benefits this will be if governments are able to integrate women and youth in the national planning, is to be able to tap from a pool of diaspora professionals. Also, we can be able to tap from strengthening international relationships. Communities back home can be able to strengthen their international relationship with the diaspora community. From my end, I think those two things are key important strategies that government should be able to adopt effectively in bringing women and girls developing the national plan.
Thank you for sharing your perspective as well, and for focusing on some key things. Very interesting perspective on the idea of exchange and basically unlocking these opportunities that allow them to give back, but not just giving back to the country, but also thinking in terms of sustainability of giving back, right? And also not only giving back in terms of how we think, which is in terms of economic ways, but also harnessing the knowledge that circulates when giving back between host countries and countries that they have moved to. And I guess of course, last but not the least, Asha, this is where you come in. We'd like to hear also your perspective, because you specifically are kind of working with the government in a way, but also from a very youth perspective. And I guess you could have like a very interesting idea, and how is that? And what do you think about the first guiding question in relation to your experience?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for having me and for organizing this event. Overall, Diaspora Youth are a really incredible but often underutilized resource. And we bring not only global exposure, but firsthand experience navigating different systems like education, health, and technology across different country contexts, giving us not only insight into what's possible, but what's missing from those things. And a lot of us maintain some kind of cultural ties, whether it be through family or lived experience, which gives us a dual perspective and puts us in a unique position to be able to adapt global solutions to local realities. And I think one thing that is important when really trying to harness youth ideas like that, and to make sure that these initiatives run effectively and efficiently, is making sure that they're grounded in what's currently needed and happening on the ground. And that's why clear, consistent communication and targeted relationship building between diaspora youth and government is so important. Not only communicating what's happening on the ground, things that might have happened since diaspora youth or their parents might have left, but sharing ways, like Noah was saying, that diaspora youth can contribute back home because oftentimes they don't know that certain mechanisms exist. Platforms such as Jamaica's Diaspora Engagement Model, shortened JADEM, or the Let's Connect town halls hosted by the former US Ambassador Audrey Marks are a good starting point. But governments, I'm a great believer of meeting youth where they are. And that means that governments should look at utilizing social media much more, not just for outreach, but as a space for actual engagement. And not only is it more accessible to diaspora youth, but it benefits local youth as well. And beyond more macro level information, there also needs to be structures that actually enable youth-led cross-border collaboration and information sharing for the more day-to-day lived realities and grassroots engagement. And as chair of the Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council, one of my key priorities outside of keeping the diaspora youth informed is connecting them with youth in Jamaica. And the solutions that emerge are not only creative, but they're grounded and rooted in current lived context, not theory, assumptions, or outdated experiences. And in terms of concrete integrating our talent international development plans, Jamaica does offer a solid starting point with the Youth Council, the GJDYC. We have elected youth representatives such as myself, elected by the diaspora, who work alongside leaders of established local Jamaican youth organizations to form an executive board and programming. But we also represent diaspora youth on the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, GJDC, which liaises directly with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. And the council includes sector leads in areas such as education and health. And each of them are connected to specific focal points within the government, which help make diaspora-led initiatives more impactful. While the model isn't perfect, it is a good starting point. But generally, to close out, if governments are truly serious about harnessing the potential of diaspora youth, they need to go beyond consultation. They need to also invest in us, just as they would for any other youth demographic, and see us as co-creators, because we're not the next generation of leaders, but we're leading now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for ending on such a high note, Asha. And that was wonderful. I think what you said ties into what Noelle and Liana were discussing earlier as well. And I think what you gave is a very concrete example of something that is not tokenistic, but like actual avenues to co-create, to co-design. I really like the phrase meeting youth where they are and unleashing the true potential of social media, not only for diaspora youth, or diaspora in general, but also for the locals and local youth included. And I think on that note, I'm going to move on to the second guiding question, which is actually related to what you kind of evoked in the first half. How can digital platforms, exchange programs, and public-private collaborations be leveraged to empower diaspora women and youth in driving development? Can you share some examples of successful mentorship, entrepreneurship, and skill sharing initiatives? Liana, would you like to start us off again?
I think we're all on the same page and speaking the same language, really. I think in terms of digital platforms, exchange programs, or public-private collaborations, these are no longer optional. Actually, it's essential, right? So essential tools in reaching diaspora women and youth. exactly where they're at. And also, as Asha said, it's really co-leading, co-creating, co-investing, and not done for the diaspora, but with the diaspora. So kind of like engaging and making us being the integral part of it, right? So in terms of digital platforms, I think bridging the gaps. Right now, we are on the digital platform, right? So there's over, I don't know, 100, maybe 100 plus people right now from all over the world, and we're all interconnecting and having a conversation. I think it should be very organic and authentic. And again, it starts with listening, willingness to listen to one another, and then including and collaborating. For example, in terms of digital platform, what in Georgian Heritage Foundation, what we did specifically for youth and children in our diaspora, because we do not have the luxury of having teachers here within our diaspora here locally. So it took us a while to find a solution, which we're so grateful. Actually, it was developed within the MFA of Georgia, which is teaching Georgian as a foreign language, because we also believe that children and youth that are assimilated within the local communities no longer speak their language if it is not in English, but for us, Georgian, for example. So we were able to create a platform to engage our children and also employ teachers from Georgia who are able to teach. So we have multiple groups, various ages, where children learn their language, history, their identity. Majority of them do not even speak Georgian, so we have English speaking group, but again, we try, because again, they're intermarriages where mother or father might be Georgian, but the other half is not, and they mostly speak English at home. So again, having that digital platform, us providing it, and all of our programs is free to our diaspora members as well. So that's assisting them. What Noel was talking about is the exchange program as well, which is so critical. So whether it's in person or virtual mentorship programs, we have such an incredible wealth of knowledge within our youth community that are so agile, they think fast. So creating mentorship programs also, whether it's pairing the schools back home to here or one-to-one mentorship is critical, again, done via the virtual platforms. And as Asha also said, social media. While social media, there should be some restrictions, but again, it is a tool. It's there to be used. So it's capitalizing on that. And then public and private collaborations, whether much of the potential lies especially in fields like education and climate, when governments and mission-driven companies can also work together. So I'm going back to what Asha said, co-creating, co-leading, listening to one another, and engaging all of us so we can create a better world. Thank you.
Thank you, Liana, and I'm glad to hear about the more concrete examples, but also the challenges that come with this, right? For example, something as simple as having language being accessible to youth that are born in other countries or like members of the diaspora, but also the difficulties in making that accessible despite having the programs on the ground. And then you discussed, of course, something that is no longer optional. I think we are all in the digital era, post-COVID world, and this is what is bringing us together today. So I guess in a way, this is a really good example of that. And maybe Noel, you would like to come in as well with some key reflections on this note, on the digital divide, public-private partnerships. I know you discussed the exchange programs earlier, but if you want to give more concrete examples, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so thank you. Just to add to words, Liana was saying, I think digital platforms, exchange programs and public-private collaboration can be good tools to leverage on to empower diaspora women and youth in driving development. Since the industrial revolution, there we have seen how the world has taken a global change in terms of how we need to interact at a global level. These digital platforms can be used to acquire knowledge, share knowledge, store knowledge that can be used for the future. So one of the most important things for us as the nation in Syria is how we enhance our educational sector using the digital platforms. So currently in Syria, what we have a free quality education that's being funded by the government of Syria. And the government with partners and looking forward to see how this quality education can be 100% digital from pre-primary school, secondary school, to even at university level. And I think the diaspora community has been contributing immensely towards building these digital platforms with enhanced education in Sierra Leone. And we have used these digital platforms not only for education, but also be able to use technology and other innovations in our healthcare systems. And Sierra Leone, as we can speak now, we can boast of some of our healthcare systems that are fully digitalized. Also, in terms of the exchange programs, I think it's a good space as well as a mission for even at the diaspora community that we speak and be able to use exchange programs to learn, to acquire knowledge, and to share to communities back home. It's a good space for diaspora members to be able to fully contribute. Because the digital platforms, you have no geographical barriers. You can work remotely, supporting initiatives back home, and work remotely, empowering women, girls, and youth and communities back home that you really probably might not have physically landed. We have been able to use digital platforms and use some of these exchange programs for our government work with some of the universities in the US to see how we can conduct exchange programs that are related to innovation and have some of our experts, some Syrians who are currently in the US that are undergoing these types of exchange programs. And we have used it as a nation to be able to back finance programs. In terms of the public-private cooperation, which is where I see it currently in Syria, we have a public-private partnership under the Office of the Vice President of Syria that has been encouraging diaspora communities to come back and invest. But we have a lot of people in the diaspora who are looking for opportunities to invest, and as a nation, we have positioned ourselves to be able to invite these diaspora members to come to Syria as a partner ground to come and invest. So we have been able to use digital platforms to enhance our education, enhance our healthcare. We'll be able to use our exchange programs to support youth and youth to further education, and we'll be able to make a public-private partnership to leverage investment for diaspora communities for foreign investments.
Thank you so much, Noel, for all of those very specific examples. I really like what you shared on having less geographical barriers and like kind of dismantling these geographical barriers through different partnerships, and also having these strategic partnerships in different aspects to kind of drive innovation, which is very key into what the power of the diaspora is. And I guess, Asha, passing it on to you to kind of close this guiding question on the digital divide. I know you talked about it a little bit, but maybe you want to dive in a bit deeper on this.
Sure. There are quite a few examples that I can think of, but one that I'm proud of is the Jamaica Diaspora Mentorship Academy, launched last year by Dr. Khalida Rand, the education sector lead of the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council. And it's in partnership with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. And it uses digital platforms to connect diaspora professionals, including some members of the Youth Council, with young people in Jamaica to offer virtual mentorship. And it's a great example of how digital spaces can bridge distance and create meaningful relationships that support youth development. On the exchange side, there is the Grace Kennedy Birthright Program, which brings 4 high-achieving diaspora youth to Jamaica each year to have a fully rounded experience. Participants are placed in internships that match their fields of study while also being immersed in Jamaican culture, history, and society. And Grace Kennedy partners with not just the government, but also a bunch of private entities to make this happen. And that program is more than just a cultural immersion, but it's a way for young people to apply their skills in a Jamaican context, which not only deepens their connection to country, but allows them to return home as more informed and committed partners in development. And one perfect example is actually the West Canadian rep for our youth council, who not only joined the Diaspora Youth Council after her experience, but is now a member of the inaugural Jamaican UN Youth Advisory Group and is currently in Jamaica doing field work for her graduate thesis regarding gender and education in Jamaica. And another initiative that I'm quite proud of and like to highlight is the GJDYC Innovation Challenge, which I introduced and oversaw last year, sponsored by various diaspora organizations and private entities such as Blue Mahole Holdings. It paired diaspora youth with local Jamaican or recently migrated youth in mixed teams to co-create development proposals based on shared ideas, areas of interest. And the winning team were young persons from New York and Jamaica, respectively, matched because of their mutual indicated interest in environment. Together, they submitted a proposal focused on agriculture. And after the challenge, I had shared the Youth Empowerment Fund and encouraged them to submit their proposal there as well. The Jamaican member of the team went on to submit an adjacent project and was awarded a grant. And he later shared that it was the experience of that challenge and the post-challenge encouragement that gave them the confidence to apply to something that big. And these are real outcomes when we're able to use social media, not only to do outreach, but use digital platforms to bridge gaps, but mentorship, skill building, and confidence and investment, not just in diaspora youth, but in local youth as well. These tools can be used to support collaborative youth-led solutions and create sustainable intergenerational, impact. And that's how we move from potential to real measurable progress.
Thank you, Asha, for sharing this and for talking to us about the GGDYC. I hope I got that right, Innovation Challenge. I think these challenges, these types of contests, right, are just such wonderful spaces for not only youth, but like diaspora, basically to take up space and really showcase their work. And I'm glad to know that that this was like a very successful thing, and would like to see like where this goes in the future. So that is about it for guiding question number 2. And we are now moving on to guiding question number 3, which is about the tangible and actionable ways governments can ensure the representation of diaspora women and youth and other disadvantaged groups in policymaking. So I think the key word here is representation. And Liana, as if you could start us off on your thoughts about this, also specific to your context, maybe, that would be wonderful.
You know, this is something that I've been really thinking about as well. And then there's a lot of political correctness, especially when they're global platforms, right? So, but again, I personally believe in authenticity and leading with purpose and heart, because that's where the diaspora is actually, with all the work that we do day in and day out. It's all led with that in mind. And so having the representation, it does not start with a seat at the table. Actually, it starts with an open invitation, trust, and willingness to listen. So I will go back to my very first part as well, right? So if we do not listen to one another, even in the times of division, we will never be successful. So I will start there. And then having the meaningful representation, we can begin with just practical steps. establishing formal diaspora advisory councils, for example, as well, with seats dedicated to women, youth, and marginalized voices. Investing in capacity building programs that help prepare diaspora women and youth to navigate policy systems. And something that I also want for the governments to think about, when we have representation, people representing us, like people representing diaspora, be it in government, right? Are they truly representatives of the diaspora? So there are many diaspora strategies, but has that person or the group walked the walk and talked the talk, lived the path of survival, displacement, contribution, and resilience? Because unless it lived experience in the part of the process, the policies risk being disconnected from the people, the actual people in the diaspora. So I believe the representation within the governments, whoever represents the diaspora, be it women and youth and marginalized voices, it should be people with that experience, lived experience, and not taught somewhere, but they should live it. So that's kind of like my 2 cents with that subject. And I'm open to hear more.
Thanks, Liana. And I really, really like what you said about being intentional. You phrased it very wonderfully. You said leading with purpose and heart. And at the core of representation for you is the idea of lived experience as a form of expertise and not something that is taught or theoretical in a classroom. And maybe, Noel, you can come in on this. Is this something that you would agree with? What are your thoughts on representation and how can we achieve authenticity when it comes to representation?
Sure, I agree with Lina. I think Lina has almost said all what I have in my mind. But just to add to what she was saying, as a tangible way that government can ensure representation of diaspora women is to ensure that they create platforms for continuous dialogues and consultations. I think one of the ways government run globally is through consultations, and that there should be a room for where contributions of diaspora women should be valued. There should be an open dialogue where governments can be able to discuss with those from the diaspora communities and make their input. And this input should not only be put in paper, but it should be actions. They should be able to implement these actions, this input of women within the consultative process. Also, I think another tangible way that government can ensure representation of the diaspora communities to give quotas to the diaspora communities. It's mostly likely, for example, in African communities for governments to create space where diaspora communities can get quota in terms of appointments, in terms of access to office, in terms of access to opportunities. So I think another tangible way that governments can use to create a way for women and to be inclusive in terms of the governance processes to apportion quotas to women and apportion quotas to youth. So for example, in Sierra Leone, I think in 2023, we were championing the gender bill that was enacted, that in Sierra Leone now every office there must be 30% of women in leadership position, 30% of women in governance, 30% of women in the public-private sector, 30% of women, especially in the private sector, not only. So I think these 2 things are quite key, and it is important that governments use them as an actionable and tangible for women and disadvantaged groups to be involved in the policy making.
Thank you, Noel, and thank you for adding to this as well, to this discussion on representation and lived experiences, kind of from a different perspective. And Asha, I think to tie this all in, this discussion on this word representation, authenticity, lived experiences, and being intentional, would like to have your 2 cents as well, and perhaps a few more additional thoughts to what has already been said in this very rich discussion.
Yeah, sure. So, ensuring representation of diaspora women, youth, and other disadvantaged groups in policymaking really requires tangible structures that go beyond symbolic gestures. And one structure that I am a huge advocate for and am a part of is the Diaspora Council model, which I believe it holds great promise when done correctly. For example, the Jamaican government, they have the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, but they do have the Youth Council, of where I sit as chair, specifically allocated for youth and for youth to be representatives and have their voices heard. These are elected positions, so kind of allocating is a bit difficult. But with that said, making sure that these elections are well advertised, that they are really out there, again, engaging social media in a much more robust way, making sure that everyone is able to have a say in who represents them on these councils that are ultimately advising the government when diaspora perspectives are needed. But the main benefit of these councils is that it serves as a consistent, centralized mechanism for dialogue between government and the diaspora, not only, for example, during Jamaica's current constitutional reform process in the Northeast USA, we were able to hold a town hall with the members of the Constitutional Reform Committee and allowing dialogue there directly, but also in points where they need advice. Obviously, it's kind of difficult to gather everyone and for the government to hear from everyone at once. So having those representatives are important. With that said, a major challenge for these roles, especially from a youth perspective, is that often they're volunteer-based and without financial or institutional support. And beyond time demands, which scheduling can also be a barrier, with meetings often following government availability, and they don't always align with youth schedules, for example, those that are in school, those that have more rigid work schedules, and those that are in different time zones. So to enable broader participation, governments should provide, whether that be some kind of financial backing, training, and logistical support to ensure that those from less privileged backgrounds can serve, and those that do serve are set up for success. As aforementioned, representation also requires intentional outreach. Opportunities to engage need to be visible and accessible, including working with youth organizations that already exist, particularly student associations. There are numerous Jamaican student associations and Caribbean student associations, and I'm sure for other countries, there are other student associations and universities that governments can be doing outreach to, or consulates can reach out to. In fact, I found out about the Youth Council because of outreach to my university student association. But making sure that you're reaching young people that are not necessarily plugged into traditional diaspora networks. And finally, council structures themselves need to be more youth-friendly, including shorter terms, such as maybe about 2 years, which would make leadership more manageable for younger candidates who are still navigating education or early career shifts, and also allows for more voices to have an opportunity to be heard in a representative space. And these changes are not just about representation for representation's sake, but for equity and access, and ensuring a wider range of voices are truly able to contribute to policymaking. And if governments are serious about inclusive development, then participation cannot be a luxury. It has to be supported, flexible, and responsive to the realities of those they seek to engage.
Thank you so much, Asha. I honestly don't know where to start because that was a really good at least this is something that we resonate with at MyCP, you know, working with youth and also working for and by youth. Really agree on the, like on a personal level, but also on like personal experience of the idea of need for institutional support, the idea of coupling representation with financial backing, capacity building, so that it is done correctly and not only for show, and the idea of having youth-friendly structuring so that it's more sustainable and also more impactful in the long run. At this point of the session, we're going to do things a little differently. We're going to switch things up. We have now reached the interactive debate and Q&A, which shall be again continued, like moderated by me. Please keep those questions coming in with the support of Annie and colleagues from the Global Diaspora Engagement Facility of the IOM. We're checking those questions, and we're going to invite some of you to, if you can and are comfortable, open your mic and ask directly to moderators to have like this interactive discussion. I'm going to, I see a very interesting question here from Patty. Patty, if you can hear this and if you're able to open your mic, maybe you'd like to ask your question directly to the panelists and they can respond. Over to you.
Hi, Francesca. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Hi, Patty. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh my gosh, what a refreshing panel. We're just talking about how pumped this is in terms of not just a lot of the blah, blah, blah that we hear when, so to say, the beyond youth diaspora in the room, when we have the youth in the room, it's really electric. I think with a lot of insights that you've given us. I was just really curious, thinking about the different spaces that you engage with, and looking at second and third generation diasporas, and particularly of this group, looking at the youth diaspora among that. And representation, as you've talked about it, is a very interesting concern. Do you have any experiences for second and third generation diaspora who are youth? In terms of how they've entered spaces, how they reach collaboration, and maybe a bit of talk around connectivity would be very useful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Patty. Liana, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you so much, Patty, for this question. Actually, that's what we see as well, because the second and third generation youth, they're so assimilated. Sometimes, like especially in Georgia and diaspora, it's quite difficult to engage them back because they're so assimilated, right? So especially, let's say, I will speak from the United States perspective because that's where I live. And on the personal even example as well. And so, for example, we have created a diaspora diplomacy engagement program within Georgian Heritage Foundation, where we have providing the platform for the diaspora voices, spotlighting the diaspora voices, not just being of service to the diaspora, but the local community. So creating that bridge between the diaspora, because we are an integral part of this local community. So we partner up like lecture series, for example, where we invite speakers from the diasporas who contribute to the local community, engaging youth within the local community. So we're kind of like providing them the platform so they can serve the local community, as well being feeling that they are part of their diaspora, they're representing, but also using their knowledge. So I believe that engagement is key. And that's why we're talking about the diaspora engagement, right? So sometimes it's pulling in and getting them in because they're already, let's say, having full-time jobs. They do not want to serve. But I think providing them the opportunity to give back, not just to the diaspora, but the local community as well, especially with youth, is beautiful to see. That's where I can speak to that.
Thanks, Liana. And would Asha or Noel want to go next? This time we can definitely shake things up. Feel free to. Um, Asha, you want to go first this time?
Sure. Actually, your question is very poignant. Myself being a second generation Jamaican, and part of what really inspired me to join the Diaspora Youth Council is because there was a lot of things that I wish that I could really, there was a lot of things I wish that I could connect with that I didn't feel there was a platform for. Um, I mean, I had the opportunity to go to Jamaica quite often, but I know that there are many that don't have that opportunity. And especially as you get into the third and fourth generation, the connection can get lost. And I believe that with the Diaspora Youth Council, firstly, one thing that I tried to do, which I'd mentioned before, is connecting the diaspora youth with local Jamaican youth because it firstly gives them firsthand experience about what's happening on the ground, especially for those that are in the third and fourth generation. But furthermore, with, for example, the Youth Innovation Challenge, actually getting them to collaborate on topics that are of interest. Say somebody has studied about water conservation, but is not necessarily as knowledgeable about not just the Jamaican context, but you can read a lot of studies, but what is actually being experienced by people that are there, and establishing those connections with local youth to give that connection, but also just general connections, inspire them to want to go to Jamaica and outside of just their family that's there. But okay, I have these networks, I have these connections. So when I go down, I can think of ideas that we can collaborate on, initiatives that we can collaborate on. But also being able to another example is the Jamaican government hosts a biennial diaspora conference. And through my chairmanship of the Youth Council, we were actually able to get a significant increase in youth participation in that conference. One, in holding topics that are of interest to them. Going beyond investment, but also engaging with different diaspora organizations, such as, off the top of my head, there's an organization called Reconnect JA, which works not only offering travel services, but also offers opportunities for diaspora, particularly in the UK, to volunteer in Jamaica. And also just, I'm listing a lot of things now, but I recently started a podcast in partnership with the IOM as an IOM Youth Changemaker that invites diaspora youth from many different walks of life to discuss not only their experiences, but what they wish to discuss. I can drop the link in the chat, but being able to engage. And I think overall, what's most important for getting second, third, and fourth generation diaspora engaged is one, through a youth perspective, connecting them to the more traditional diaspora channels, such as the consulates, whether that be hosting youth networking events like we did in November last year with the Jamaican consulate in New York, or whether that be through encouraging people, hey, join the Ambassadors Let's Connect sessions. This topic will be pretty interesting. I'll be there, there will be other young people there. And honestly, that is a lot of the encouragement that's needed to get people to spark interest. And from there, the possibilities are limitless.
Thanks, Asha. Honestly, wonderful. And maybe Noel, you'd also like to build on what Asha has been talking about because you're also coming from a youth perspective.
Yes. So I think for me, what as a nation, as Sierra Leone done over the years. So in Sierra Leone, we have under the Ministry of Tourism, which is the government-led ministry, there's an agency that's called Monuments and Relics. It's an agency that was set by the government of Sierra Leone to properly reintegrate this generational diaspora leaders who are coming to know what's happening back when we have a lot of diasporas who are probably as Paddy mentioned that further report that diaspora, they really don't have connect to their home country where their parents were born, or their parents' parents were born, and seeking information to know where they truly belong. So as I mentioned, we have that commission that is charged with the responsibility of conducting workshops for young people who really wants to know their origin, their background. We also have historical activities where they will take some of this third and fourth generation to have first-hand information to where probably slavery took place, probably where wars that were fought in Africa years ago. So we have first-hand understanding of what's been happening in Africa. And finally, we take them on tours to understand the culture, because most third and fourth generation really don't have an understanding of the culture of their forefathers or of their parents. So as a government, we set up this government agency to be able to pass down intergenerational culture to the third and fourth generation who are diaspora leaders. And I'm telling you, it's been an amazing year in, year out. In December, we have a lot of diasporas who are flooding Sierra, who wants to know about the culture, who wants to see some of the historic events that happens in Sierra Leone and West Africa. And that has been able to increase our tourism, and that has been able to increase our economy over time.
Thank you so much, Noel, for closing us off on that question. And I hope that Thaddy, that kind of answers your question and goes beyond and above it. Also, Noel, really like the idea that there are dedicated spaces for like as entry points, as Patty was saying, and that it is possible. Like I think that the key takeaway from this is that it is possible to have these spaces if there is the political will that we have been discussing earlier. And we have some other questions in the chat. I think this one is from Mortada in the chat. How can diaspora communities effectively contribute to strengthening healthcare systems in both sending and receiving countries, particularly in times of crisis? How can these initiatives be impactful? So something more from a health perspective. Would anyone like to start us off?
We have not had really the opportunity to be engaged in the health sector, but it is something that is also very important, especially for the newly immigrated diaspora members who yet to, for example, have any insurance coverages, especially in the United States. It's quite difficult to get into the system, right? So what we have had, let's say accidents, if there happen, especially during crossing of the borders, we have had some situations actually with the Georgian community members reaching out to us, to Georgian Heritage Foundation, with an assistance with accident that has happened during crossing the border. So it was a unified effort actually with our Consulate General here in San Francisco that we stepped in as a community and helped this family wrap our hands around, as well as with the Mexican ambassador of Georgia as well. But in terms of further involvement, unfortunately, I cannot really speak to that much.
No, but thank you so much, Liana, for sharing, as well as like the not necessarily directly like working in this and but also like the want to work in this, but also
Yeah.
how connections are essentially super important and in finding the right person who might be able to help in a given situation. And I think the idea of networks, right, is something that is also
It should be a network, absolutely.
networks in the diaspora. Asha or Noel, would you like to add to this discussion on health? And yes, go ahead, Noel.
Okay, so for me as an example, the diaspora community has been able to help, especially in Syria, to upscale our healthcare system. Years ago, our healthcare system as a nation was nothing to write home about. And over time, we've had contributions from the diaspora community. So really not only maybe in the diaspora contributing towards building proper health care back home. And in one of my conversations, I talked about exchange programs. So in 2015, Sierra Leone and some other West African countries were exposed to the Ebola. And one of the interventions there was from the diaspora communities to come back home and help in solving this hemorrhagic fever that broke out in Sierra Leone and other communities. And in 2021, we saw the outbreak of the COVID-19, and we saw the importance of the diaspora community, how they can help in back home and supporting their conditions, the proper health care system. So for us as a nation, I think the diaspora community has played an immense role in building proper healthcare system, not only healthcare system, but industrialized and digitalized healthcare systems for Sierra Leone. And I can only speak that as a nation, today we have one of the best healthcare systems in West Africa.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Noel, for sharing that. I think that's undisputable, right? Like the very tangible contributions of the diaspora, which goes back to what we were discussing earlier in terms of knowledge sharing, but also in terms of crisis. Something that you brought up is the experience during the pandemic and how community efforts were leveraged, not only within the local communities, but also transnationally across borders through the diaspora. So wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. And maybe Asha, you'd like to close this question off, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, it's a very interesting question. And while I can't necessarily speak to strengthening healthcare systems as a whole, I can speak to an initiative from the Jamaica Awareness Association of California, which actually our Western/Midwest USA representative for the Youth Council is a part of. But they do annual trips, bringing doctors, nurses to Jamaica, particularly to volunteer in rural areas and offer healthcare services. And in general, I think in that regard, again, I'm not as well versed in health specifically, but having the different diaspora organizations, not just work together, but actually be aware of all of the different things that are going on so they can collaborate on initiatives like this. So say there is another organization in the UK that's doing something similar. How can efforts be effectively, not necessarily combined, but work in tandem and build off of each other? So that is one of the great things that the diaspora councils are able to do by bringing these networks of people together, each of them doing their own separate things. But because we're a global network, you now understand, oh, this organization is doing this and this organization is doing this. Oh, I can support this organization with this. And bringing different organizations together, because there are many different diaspora organizations. And that's why these councils were kind of put in place to create a centralized forum for this kind of information sharing, and as well as the JADEM platform for diaspora organizations and members of the diaspora to share what they're doing. So when it comes to health, and honestly any initiative when it comes to giving back to home country, being able to collaborate and to integrate the different initiatives that are going on around the world, from diaspora around the world, can make for a more streamlined and more effective way of impacting development at home.
Thank you, Asha, for sharing. And, this is basically what Liana also was sharing earlier as an example. It's the idea of building bridges, right? Like you might not be able to directly contribute the idea of having these very specific structures, organizations that are dedicated spaces for the diaspora. It helps bring people together and actually find the right person who can do the job. So thank you for that. I see that Abdul Sereja wants to come in and join the discussion. If you're with us and you're able to unmute, I invite you to unmute and ask your question to the panelists.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Abdul Sirija. I'm a communications and external relations specialist, currently in Cote d'Ivoire. So my question goes, I just want to know, how can the voices of youth in crisis-affected areas be represented in the iDiaspora program? Specifically, how can you ensure that the experiences of youth in Northeast Nigeria and West Africa, considering the high rise of military takeover in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, which pose threats to West Africa democracy, which can be an impediment to youth employment, education, and social development. Do you have provisions for these youths who are currently experiencing high level of insecurity due to insurgency from ISWAP and Boko Haram in the sub-Saharan region? Additionally, do you have any provisions for the youth in Palestine? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abdul, for asking this question. I think the panelists' specific experiences to your question are not like I don't think they would be the best to answer this question, but maybe we can have a more broader kind of angle or view to this question, and like how essentially can we ensure that certain programs with regards to the diaspora can also reach the youth that are in situations of crisis, that are in situations of conflict and displacement, which is also very common in many of the countries of origin of big diaspora groups worldwide. So does anybody want to start this very interesting question?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, Abdul, thank you for that question. I can speak from the experience of the 14-year-old girl that was standing on the shore of Black Sea, faced with the military aircrafts bombing people who were about to embark on the very last ship departing from Sukhumi. I'm from the region of Georgia that has been occupied by Russia since 1993. Miraculously saved by my father, and then becoming a refugee within my own country, along with 300,000 displaced people, majority of them women and youth. And trying to survive homelessness, hunger, where you will not needed anywhere. So it's a huge huge mental impact and a trauma that especially women and children and youth live through their entire life. And so it's a critical moment in the world as well, be it the war in Ukraine, what's happening in Palestine, around the world as well. What is critical for us as the diaspora organizations on the ground, the governments, again, going back to it, having the programs that support the youth and especially mental resilience. For example, what we are doing right now within the Diaspora Diplomacy Engagement Program, we're launching a youth mental resilience initiative. Again, it's been inspired from that young 14-year-old girl who went through quite an experience, a lifetime experience that will remain with me forever. But what has helped me to remain sane in a way, to overcome the struggles, was the community, were the strangers, were the kindness. Because I believe in humanity, and while governments have the responsibility to support and have programs, it also comes down to the kind human beings who extend themselves, extend their homes, share the last meal maybe with a family that's struggling, and us just listening to one another and being kinder. It's simple, right? So this is not something as a rocket science, but again, what kept me alive was human kindness before government came in.
Thank you very much, Liana, for sharing the very and your radical honesty as well, and sharing very personal experience that is also very relevant to today's times. And I think perfectly answers as well, like the question, would Asha or Noel also want to come in on this question in times of conflict, in times of very hard to reach populations or members of the diaspora? Oh, yes, Noel, if you would like to say a few words, otherwise it's also fine.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Abdul, for that question. From my side, I think how can the voices of youth be captured in the iDiaspora platform? I think the iDiaspora platform gives young people the opportunity to be able to share their views, learn and interact with other people. For some of us that works in the corporate governance sector, I think I am globally have been working to see how we create better space for these young people who are within the regions of conflict. And I think the team globally have been working to enhance that opportunity for youth. We will continue to use these platforms and other platforms to
Excuse me, sorry, Noel, I can't hear your voice. Could you please be audible a bit?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. So as I was saying, the iDiaspora platform is a platform that is used to share experiences of the young people, and would continue to use it to advocate, use the iDiaspora platform and other global platforms to advocate for better opportunities for young people who are within the conflict region. I understand of the dynamics that's happening in Niger, in Mali, in Nigeria, but as well the other young people who are within those regions who were in contact with that are making positive strides to see we empower young people in those regions. And governments have been working behind the scenes to ensure that women, girls, and youth are not caught within the military lines of those wars happening in these areas. And IOM as well has been working to ensure that they create a space where most of these young people are not fully affected by what's happening within their region.
Thank you, Noel, for coming in. And Asha, would you like to say a few words? Otherwise, we can move to the next question.
I'm sure I can say something briefly. While I don't have much context for people that are coming from more conflict zones, however, my mind does run to when the conflict in Ukraine had first broken out recently. There were a few Jamaican students that were there studying, and it really was the coordination of the diaspora and the connection with the members of the Diaspora Council or connections that were in Europe, and considering our representation currently has representation in the UK, that really put boots on ground to make sure that we were able to evacuate those students. It really highlights the importance of diaspora organizations, especially when governments aren't as able or as nimble to reach people in times of crisis like that. And I think that it really highlights the importance of diaspora community and having global networks like that. So not only are you able to make quick action to evacuate and provide support for people while they process how they're going to make it back home or how they're going to continue their studies, but also organizations such as Noir United, which isn't a Jamaica diaspora entity, but it was founded by someone that I went to grad school with, and really highlighting the marginalized people that are not typically that weren't necessarily broadcast in the news at the time, that were also being affected by the conflict, which are also diaspora from, African nations, also Jamaica, but highlighting, that the diaspora in a whole, and saying that there's a larger picture, and ensuring that they also had a voice in what was going on and highlighting their story. So, yeah.
Thanks so much, Asha. And I guess, and thank you very much again for sharing your thoughts on this question, which I think is really a relevant question that we can ask in today's turbulent times. I see that Professor Binod has a question on youth and women are two subsets in a diaspora. So how are they interacting, linking across their generation and within the generation? Does anyone want to start us off here? Maybe.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's an excellent session today, focusing particularly on youth and gender in diaspora. So the first question that comes to my mind is related to what Liana's example of that 14-year-old girl and other soft skills, so to say. They're not skills, but they're more like, human nature in terms of kindness and other inspirations and so on. So I am just trying to think the first question that comes to mind in terms of thinking of youth and adults, say youths and adult and men and women in gender. How are they different? Say diaspora is a very, very holistic kind of a concept, and it has different categories, subsets, as I said. So we have the subset of, when we are discussing networking or across organizations of diaspora, most of the discourse is in terms of one youth organization interacting with another youth organization within the diaspora or in a different diaspora, and similarly women's organizations between women's organizations. But what I'm trying to think is how these boundaries are crossed. Say, for example, youth is a very interesting so to say, demographic group, which is sitting in between children, adolescents, and the adults. So this 14-year-old girl is right at the fence. See, if we look at the definition of youth, it begins at 15 years, 15 to 24. Of course, I mean, these are very watertight kind of definitions given by somebody, some organizations, which are not to be followed in letter, but more in spirit. So certainly that 14-year girl's example is unique in the sense that it's at the threshold of being a child, an adolescent, and entering the range of the youth. What are the inspirations that drive such age group within the diaspora to interact with their parents, which is older, adult generation, or grandparents, and then toddlers, or infants? So these are, I think, important issues which cut across education and health issues within the diaspora and across the diaspora. And you have already spoken a lot about in host country, home country, or third country. Not many people have spoken about third country. I tend to always say that the diaspora dialogue, discourse, is obsessed with homeland. We started with homeland ages ago. We have to cross that boundary and think of third country development, where the diaspora doctors and nurses can go to not to homeland, but to a third country, say a very poor country, which is affected by Ebola. I used to give the example of Ebola when Ebola was there. Now we talk about COVID and so on. So that's where I think the role of and most of the, say, Indian doctors, for example, in the diaspora, are a large category of doctors, say API, American Associations of Physicians of Indian origin. That's a very large organization doing very, typical and exemplary health work in different home country, for example, in Andhra Pradesh and Bihar state of India. But what about they are going to Congo, for example? And that's where when they go, they are not going with their family. They are going to do grassroots level work and devoid of the day-to-day responsibilities of looking after the family or children and others. And I have live examples of such doctors who have spent 3 months there. And I tend to think that the issue of global commons can be brought into this. We have global commons in terms of the UN peacekeeping force, but we don't have UN healthkeeping force. And that's where the diaspora can have a rotational kind of role in terms of that one particular batch of doctors and nurses who spend 3 months and would be replaced by another, so that you are not distanced from your other generations of cutting across other generations of the diaspora family and so on. So I think we have to bring in some innovations into the thinking of the diaspora as a whole. It is the 19th objective of the GCM, which is unique in the sense that this is the only objective out of 23 where the onus lies on the diaspora itself, on non-state. All the 22 other objectives, the main role is given to the state actors, and this is the only one where the non-state actor has a major role. And I think the women play an excellent, important role. Why do we have doctors as mostly as men and nurses as women? I mean, that actually is pinned into the issue that Liana has raised in terms of this human inspiration and kindness and so on. Thank you. I could have gone on, but I should stop there.
Thank you, Professor Binod, and thank you for these really important insights and reflections that link to this discussion, and also on a more technical note, like broadly speaking, not just this session, but the GDVE sessions that were organized even prior to this. If anybody would like to react, and we would be ending the kind of interactive session on this note, and then moving on to the final question for the panelists.
Okay.
Liana, I think you're eager to react. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Professor, for this insightful question, and also your input in this, because it's critical. Again, bottom line, we're all humans, right? So we have our own roles, whether we are in public sector, in private sector, or we are diaspora organizations. Again, there are certain things that come from the experience, and also willingness and having the courage to lead, right? So if we lead with purpose and heart, especially serving others, magic can happen. So for example, what we have established, and again, Georgian Heritage Foundation is not my full-time job. It's my heart's project, so to say. And so we embarked and have the courage of embarking on this project that is called Diaspora Diplomacy Engagement Program, right? So what it is that empowering and again uniting the community. So it's one individual, then it's your family, then it's community, and then you grow within, right? So but again, at the purpose of it all, these are the soft skills. So how do we engage that 14-year-old, whether it's a boy or a girl? How do we engage a third or fourth generation that is completely being assimilated? What are the roots? And so I think that is a role of the diaspora organizations on the ground, creating meaningful programs that are engaging, not something that is just for the show or to be posted somewhere that we've done something. No, actual meaningful, so we can keep them like on the roots. Like, why are we spotlighting, let's say, a Georgian teenager? We will have a lecture series on our third series right now that we're engaging the local government here in the Silicon Valley in the city of San Jose, which is actually what is interesting right now, and I will touch base on that as well, that right now with funds being cut. So how do we froze, what do we do? How do we move forward? I think we need to no longer ask for permission and create programs that are low budget, high impact, working with local government. There are so many resources and spaces to host meetings and lectures and educational sessions and actually engaging youth so they teach. Our next lecture, we will have 3 teenage girls, 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, engaging the local community. Georgian girls teaching, and again, Silicon Valley is a melting pot. We have all the people living here. And so we're engaging them, teaching them things that are, and that's how we bring it in. And then again, as you said, Professor, for us, while we want to go back to our host countries and contribute, that is our goal for sure. But we also can contribute to local communities and the third countries as well, because that's a wealth of knowledge, and that's what global diaspora is all about. That's why we're being engaged. What we're doing right now is exactly that. We're sharing the knowledge and learning from one another, regardless of our age and gender and identity, right? So I think we're on something very magical here, and we need to continue going.
Thank you very much, Liana.
Thank you.
And that on this, we're going to end the interactive discussion and the very productive interactive discussion and finish with question number 4 back to our panelists. Thank you again, Professor Binod, for joining us here in this wonderful interactive discussion. And for those that sent questions in the chat, don't worry, we can continue this conversation after the Zoom session. Unfortunately, we have a lot of topics to cover and we don't have all the time, the luxury of time in the world. But as a final guiding question for today's panel discussion, it's more, I guess, informal. It's the least formal of all the questions. What advice can you offer to partners in the public and private sector seeking to align diaspora skills, talents, and aspirations, especially from women and youth groups? Liana, some final thoughts on this guiding question?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that will summarize all of our, and kind of like going back into this circle, so to say, of yin and yang. I think we need to, for the public and private sector, to listening to the diaspora, not as a resource to extract from, but as a partner in the long-term impact, because we hold the knowledge and the life experience of contributing to that long impact. And for my fellow diaspora organizations on the ground in various fields, we need to stop waiting for permission, to have the courage to act even without funds. Again, having funds is fantastic. We can do so much more, but when the funding is scarce, we can have low budget, high impact programs that are grounded in purpose, that can move mountains. Because we create trust that invites future support. So I think that would be my 2 cents.
Thank you, Liana. The idea of trust building and listening, which we think is very basic and it's very straightforward, but like in terms of execution is maybe not that simple. And it's something that we have to work on together moving forward.
Yes, having a framework is critical and having the structure is critical, but I think at the core of it is the unity and engagement and staying the course, because again, we're on something very good here.
Thank you, Liana. Noel, some final thoughts on you, advice? Apologies. There you go.
Thank you so much, Francesca. I think this has been quite an interactive conversation. Finally, I think an advice I can be able to offer to partners in both the private and public sector that are seeking to align diaspora skills, talent, and aspirations, especially for women and youth, to firstly to understand what are the needs and the aspirations of the diaspora women and communities. When you're able to understand these needs, understand these aspirations, you can be able to really offer a better partnership can be able to really offer a better partnership in helping the diaspora communities. Also, what I think also that is needed is to encourage investment in diaspora-led projects. So in terms of the public-private sectors looking forward to align diaspora skills to invest in diaspora projects, we have a lot of diasporas who are looking forward to invest back home in their community. So there should be how we can be able to invest in diaspora-led projects. And finally, I think another way we can be able to work or to align the thoughts of the diasporas back home is how governments can be able to create the enabling environment for diaspora communities to thrive. Because governments all around the world are able to call the shots, and if there's not the government, the diaspora communities cannot be able to be productive and be able to work properly in geographical locations.
Thank you, Noel, also for closing in this session, and the idea that there's much that has started and we're getting somewhere and gaining momentum, but also that we can keep doing better and keep pushing to align priorities to make sure that we don't lose sight of those goals in the short term, medium term, and long term moving forward. And Asha, please do the honors. What advice would you give and to youth, for youth also, and for women with regards to the diaspora?
Sure. Oftentimes, especially in a Jamaican context where remittances make up a significant portion of the country's GDP, a lot of times when we talk about diaspora, there's a tendency to focus on business and investment, which are both extremely important and definitely an asset that diaspora communities possess. But if we truly want to align with diaspora youth, especially those in their early 20s who are going early in their careers, they're furthering their education, they're making important life transitions, we need to recognize that their greatest contributions of this demographic isn't always financial. They're creative, they're innovative, and deeply rooted in a desire to make a difference. So public and private sector partners, I feel, need to shift their perspective, investing in diaspora youth, and not necessarily just financially, but supporting their projects, giving them a platform. It's about long-term impact and not necessarily immediate returns. And these young people, including myself, are brimming with ideas, innovation, and energy to volunteer. They provide human capital, and they bring fresh perspectives and skills that can solve complex challenges in ways that we may not have even considered. So my advice to partners is simple, really, to invest in diaspora youth growth, support their initiatives, and be willing to listen and learn. Programs that provide mentorship, skill building, and platforms for their voices to be heard will pay off in the form of more engaged, empowered, and innovative generation. And the impact might not be immediate, but it will be profound and lasting. Once you build that relationship and that trust and that interest in supporting back home, when they become more established, that is untapped potential for future investment if that's the long-term goal from the diaspora. But ultimately, aligning with diaspora youth means that we're investing in the future. And the more we give, the more we'll get in return.
Thank you so much, Asha. And like you said earlier, not only investing in the future, but investing in now, investing in the present, right? What a wonderful way to end today's session. Many thanks to the three panelists. You all were stellar panelists, and for having me moderate this session. I had so much fun, and also to all those that joined us today, to the organizers and everybody who sent in their questions for this very rich discussion. Now, I would like to give the floor to the partner organization today for the closing remarks. Ms. Marilyn P., Head of Protection and AAP Division AI of the IOM. Marilyn P. joins the IOM from the United Nations Population Fund, where she held various roles in the field, regional agency headquarters concerning gender and humanitarian affairs and external partnerships. She has experience in the field in operations within Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, working with other UN agencies, including the OCHA, Department of Peacekeeping Operations, the UNDP, the UN Development Coordination Office, and resident coordination offices. Marilyn's professional career is centered on promoting gender equality and human rights with both development and humanitarian contexts. And it is my honor that I'm going to be passing on to her the floor to formally wrap up this very rich discussion today. Ms. Marilyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Riza. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, loud and clear. No, and it was actually also a pleasure just to join the last panel. So it's also very good to hear the outcome of the discussions. So, dear colleagues and friends, I mean, it's a real privilege to address you today on behalf of Ms. Ogoshi Daniel, the IOM Deputy Director General for Operations, for the closing remark of this global virtual diaspora exchange on concrete solutions. I mean, over the past sessions, we have witnessed the remarkable creativity, resilience, and leadership of diaspora community, particularly young leaders and women who are stepping up and driving change in profound way. Women are leading inclusive initiatives, while young diaspora leaders from second and third generations are using technology and innovative thinking to reshape how we engage with diaspora. This shift is really essential. And as we reflect on this year exchange now firmly established as a flagship initiative, I'm really confident that you have learned from and inspired from one another. This year, we also have strengthened our work under the framework of the Global Diaspora Policy Alliance, the GDPI, you're all aware of. This is an ecosystem where government, diaspora, community, youth, experts, and the private sector collaborate to scale up solutions and create lasting impact. So the lessons learned we learned this year reinforce the importance, right, of listening to and empowering diaspora community. Today, I also want to highlight 3 key lessons that have emerged from this exchange. And we just heard about that just at the last session again. The first, let me turn to the innovative force of diaspora youth. We hold here today that young diaspora leaders are really at the forefront of delivering creative and impactful solutions to global changes. The fresh perspective, forward-thinking ideas are influencing global agenda, from climate action, employment to migration and social justice. By introducing new form of participation and challenging outdated structure, they really helping to create more inclusive, collaborative space where all voices are heard. I mean, young diaspora leaders are not waiting for change, right? They're driving it. Second, let me turn to the leadership and resilience of diaspora women. We also heard today that diaspora women are pivotal actors in sustainable development, contributing significantly to their home country through remittances, advocacy, and entrepreneurship. We also know that they remit a higher portion of their income compared to their male counterparts, demonstrating their strong commitment to community development and family well-being. But their leadership goes beyond financial contribution. Diaspora women often play multi-faced role, navigating responsibility with the household, community, and professional environment. Their experience positions them uniquely as a powerful advocates for gender equality and human rights. And a recent survey conducted by IOM with the South American diaspora showed that 50% of women report that living abroad creates opportunity, and 45% said it offers more freedom. That tells us a lot. Further, diaspora women are leading numerous innovative mentorship, entrepreneurship, and skill-share initiatives. These efforts significantly enhance social cohesion, foster intergenerational dialogue, and promote inclusive development. Their leadership in this area showcase the potential to transform challenge into opportunity, driving forward impactful solution and innovation. For our partners in both public and private sector, it is essential to actively invest in empowering diaspora women. We just heard again in this last panel. Commit to providing resources, supporting capacity building, and creative inclusive space that genuinely acknowledge and amplify their contribution and leadership. And finally, let me talk about the importance of building inclusive and collaborative space. Public and private sector, along with development partners, are increasingly recognizing the potential of diaspora and investing in their idea. Diaspora youth and women are demonstrating that real change happens when we work together across generation, culture, and border. Governments have a vital role to play in recognizing and integrating the talent of diaspora women and youth, especially into national plan for health, education, technology, and climate action. To effectively achieve this, intentional strategies such as advisory boards, focusing on diaspora women and youth, tailoring training program and accessible platform for consultations are essential. This measure can ensure that the voice and perspective can influence policy-making processes on migration. As we conclude this year Global Virtual Diaspora Exchange, let us carry this lesson forward. The innovative energy of youth, the leadership of women, the power of inclusive collaboration are the foundation for future progress. The Global Diaspora Policy Alliance, co-financed by the IOM Development Fund and the key member states, provide us with a framework to sustain this momentum and scale up solutions that are driven by and for diaspora community. In conclusion, the integration of diaspora women and youth into national plan is not just a strategic move. It is a moral and economic imperative. By leveraging their talents and fostering an inclusive environment, we can drive sustainable development and create a more equitable and prosperous future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marilyn P., for joining us for this wonderful session and putting a wrap not only to today's session, but also to the last of the Global Diaspora Virtual Exchanges. Ending on a high note in this regard, many thanks as well to everyone again for joining the session, to the organizers, through the panelists, and through the amazing questions from the crowd today. The organizers will compile a comprehensive report to capture all key recommendations from diaspora leaders. So there is still something to stay tuned for, and because that report will be made available in the summer. I hope that you enjoyed today's session, and I hope that you have some key takeaways for today. Many thanks again for having me as a moderator, and good evening, good afternoon, or good morning to everyone, depending on where you are.